This is the Agribusiness Report. I'm Tony St. James. Today we're joined by Floyd Gaibler. Floyd is Director of Trade Policy and Biotechnology with the U.S. Grains Council in Washington, D.C. Floyd, great to see you again.
Good to see you, Tony. It's always nice to talk to you.
Well, it's an interesting time that we're living in right now with things being shut down, things starting though to open back up. How has that affected the U.S. Grains Council, not just here in the States, but overseas as well?
Well, like other organizations, businesses, we've had to go to a virtual environment, but we've been able to make that transition. We had our Board of Delegates meeting virtually. Our overseas offices continue to do their programming virtually. One positive aspect of it is that we actually can get larger participation in a lot of these conferences, and we're able to. The technology allows for simultaneous translation, that sort of thing. We're actually having an ethanol buyers conference virtually on Wednesday. We'll have a grain export exchange next month. We've made the transition. It's not the same, obviously, as meeting in person, but we've made the adjustment.
Well, some would say that necessity is the mother of invention. Maybe there are some positive things that have come out of this, new ways to communicate not only with stakeholders here, but new customers as well.
Yeah, I think coming out of this in a post-COVID environment, we'll probably do a hybrid of both virtual and personal meetings. Particularly, it gives us the opportunity to reach groups that we may not have been able to get through our regular programming activities. And as I mentioned, we can actually have larger participation, whether it's a broad industry conference or whether it's a meeting with a specific customer. So I think the lessons learned will be incorporated, and we'll make those adjustments down the road.
Let's talk on the topic of trade for a moment. And when we start talking about trade, it seems like one of the first things we always think about, or countries that we always think about, is China. And before all this began, we saw a phase one agreement signed between the two countries and some lofty pledges in place as well. Have you been following that phase one agreement and where we've been and where we're going?
Yes, certainly. So the agreement was signed in January, went into effect in February, and then of course COVID came upon us globally, and like other trade issues, this one had some effect in the realm of the purchases commitment of it got off to a slow start. Under that agreement, China agreed to buy $40 to $50 billion of agriculture and food products this year and next year. The agreement was actually backloaded so that more of that commitment would fall in 2021. And we've seen good results from it. Obviously, we've had tremendous sales of corn, of grain sorghum. We're optimistic that we will have some sales of ethanol and dried distillers grains at some point. We think that this agreement will stay in place, and I think both sides are committed to the agreement on the purchases side. But frankly, in my view, the most important part of this agreement was the structural reforms that were incorporated in it. Collectively, the food and agriculture industry raised 57 different trade and non-tariff trade issues with China to be negotiated. Among those for us were things like trying to get a more streamlined registration process for plants to ship GDGs to China. We didn't have a protocol for barley and malt products, and so that was another one. And then, of course, the asynchronous policies on biotech. So to date, 50 of those 57 issues has actually been resolved. And most of our issues have been resolved. Really the only outstanding one is revision and reform of their biotechnology process. But it is on schedule as we understand it, and this is a longer term process that's going to take probably about a year to work through all of the elements. But I think moving forward, if those reforms stay in place and are agreed to, I think it will make a major impact down the road.
So we're focused right now on that phase one side, but it's important to know that's just one phase. Second phase, are there more opportunities for ag when we start looking at phase two?
Well, potentially there could be. I think it's very unclear right now what would entail a phase two, and if it would actually happen. I think a lot of it will depend on the outcome of the election. Obviously, if the Trump administration is given a second term, I would fully expect them to move towards some sort of phase two process. It's unclear to me what a Biden administration would do, but I think they would obviously want to continue some level of engagement on these issues, because there's still a lot of, particularly on the non-ag side, some of the technology issues, tech transfer, theft of technology, all those, other types of issues that, we'll have to have further negotiation. But this agreement really does, I think, lay the foundation for production, agriculture, and food to have more consistent, reliable market access.
Some other agreements, we could easily put USMCA there, the revised Nafta agreement, and I know there's a handful of other countries that we're potentially looking at free trade agreements with as well. What do you see on that front?
Well, first of all, the USMCA is important for a number of reasons. One, obviously, we updated the Nafta agreement with our two most important partners on both sides of the border. But secondarily, USMCA has really become the template for our other free trade negotiations. And you'll see elements that are being negotiated right now in each and every one of them that include, the provisions that were part of the USMCA agreement. Things like the biotech language, which was an unprecedented thing because it was not only, covers both traditional biotech but also new plant breeding innovation. But these provisions, were mandated, so they are not optional. So they do have some power of force behind them. And then the SPS, Sanitary Phytosanitary Agreement, was strengthened to the highest extent that I've ever seen in a trade agreement. And it, to me, most importantly, it will provide a structure to address some of these trade policy issues that we come up with consistently, to be addressed in a very short-term fashion. So this is really kind of providing the anchor for moving forward. Now, we have USMCA in place, but we also have a few challenges. Mexico has, heretofore had a very efficient risk assessment and approval process for biotech products, but since May of 2018, that process has really kind of, been stymied. They have not approved any. The agency that does the approval process, lost some budget support. There was a lot of people that had left, so the institutional memory and resources were there. But then most recently, it went from an independent agency status to being part of now the Ministry of Health down there. So we do have concerns about the delay. We've obviously interacted with USTR, USDA, but we've also talked to our Mexican counterparts as well. So that's one issue. The second issue is glyphosate. Last November, the ministry that handles pesticide issues put in place a ban on glyphosate imports, but it also impacted and delayed pending registrations and re-registrations of different pesticide products. So that issue is also very important, and one that's really on top of mind. The third issue is seasonal produce. This is an issue that was debated during USMCA. Florida and Georgia tomato, fruit, and vegetable groups have argued that Mexico is receiving, their industry is receiving unfair subsidies. It's hurting their businesses. They want the ability to put import restraints during their harvesting period. Mexico would not agree to that as part of the USMCA agreement, but USTR said they were going to commit to follow through, which they did. They had a couple field hearings last month. They issued a plan of action on September 1, with the key point being a International Trade Commission, what they call a 201 investigation on blueberries. So that is another issue that we're going to have to watch out for, because the Mexican government and the industry has basically said if there are these kinds of actions actually being ultimately being put in place, they will take reciprocal type of actions, which could impact a number of commodities, including ours, particularly corn, being our #1 export market, but dried distiller grains, sorghum, ethanol. So we have to address all three of those and see if we can't get them resolved here before we get too far down the road on any of these issues.
I know we touched on the biotech issue, but another one that we see coming down the road, and there are internal debates inside the U.S. as to how to classify things like gene editing. Is that anything that's on the radar as well when it comes to trade with other countries?
Well, not specifically, primarily because there really are no gene-edited products that affect our portfolio right now. But there has been an effort to again try and educate you know, the consumers, our customers, and the governments in various parts of the world to understand the difference between traditional biotech GMO products and these new plant breeding innovation techniques. So we have a couple of projects, one in Mexico, one in Vietnam. We're working with research university groups, and we've had you know, a number of seminars to help explain and help everybody understand, you know, how this technology is different, and more importantly, what the real benefits are of this technology moving down the road. So, you know, I think it will become more of an issue down the road, particularly when you get to the point where you actually see some of these products commercialized and put into trade.
Always great to visit with you. I always learn so much, especially when we start talking about the biotech and the trade issues. If somebody wants to follow along with what's happening at the U.S. Grains Council, can we do that online?
Yeah, just go to our website, and you know, you can tap into a lot of areas of what we're doing on trade, issues like sustainability, and you know, we put out a global a weekly publication of various stories. A lot of them are all, you know, usually involving some issue on trade policy. So yeah, we you know, and we're always happy to, you know, talk to people like yourself and you know, help illuminate these issues and the importance of them and why we're involved in them.
Again, find it online at grains.org. That's grains.org. Floyd Gaibler is Director of Trade Policies and Biotech with the U.S. Grains Council on today's Agribusiness Report.